it doesn't work as well. This stream is live on all socials. Yay! Thanks, guys and girls. Like the countdown timer. Yes, Neha, we should do something like this. Cool. So here we are. We are live with Ami, and Ami works as a designer at Amazon. And I want to say conversation designer, but I think you are doing much more than that. But first things first, Ami, tell me, where did you start? What's your background?
Right. So I'm basically from Gujarat in India, and I did my plus two there, and then I moved to Vellore. I did my engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer by qualification, and then I sort of got interested into design. So I pursued a post graduation in product design. I was in Bangalore in Indian Institute of Science, and I had amazing 2 years learning design over there. And from there, I joined Robert Bosch. I was with Bosch for about 2.5 years, and I was working on design of home appliances, things like refrigerators, dishwashers, mixer grinders, and stuff like that. And from there, I sort of took a leap of faith. I joined SAP. SAP. I worked in the healthcare team of SAP, and I was working on designing of hospital management software, patient management software for hospitals in Germany, and spent almost 5 years over there, 4.5 years over there doing that. And that's when I came by this opportunity at Amazon, and now since last 1.5 years, I work with Amazon in the Alexa India team, and I work on all India first experiences. I design the India first experiences, um, like payments, like education, like the recently launched Celebrity Voice experience. We launched Amitabh Bachchan Celebrity Voice back in August. So these are some of the projects that I've been currently doing in the field of voice user experience, so to say, which is slightly different from conversation design, but we can get into it later.
Okay. Before we get into that, tell me a bit about two things. One, how come mechanical engineering to design? And secondly, I wouldn't have thought that IISc does a design course. So how did you make that transition?
Correct. So, when I was in mechanical engineering, all of us have elective subjects, right? Not just mech. All branches have elective subjects, and I had taken, I think, subjects like tool design and machine design and product design, which sort of got me interested into the world of design. And I was like, hey, I think this is where I can make my mark. This seems, to resonate with my personality, and as a child in school, I used to be a bit, on the creative side, and I was good at math also. So engineering comes from the math, and then this was an opportunity to also explore my creative side into design. So that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to write the entrance exam for design, the common entrance exam for design, CEED. And then that's how I landed up at IISc, Indian Institute of Science. They have an amazing course on product design and manufacturing, and it's the professors are simply great, and I think I learned a lot. I think I unlearned a lot first when I joined IISc into that course, and then sort of re-established my thinking process, and it helped me a lot to think structurally, and how to approach design, be it product design, like of tangible products, like I said, dishwashers, washing machines, things like that, to graphic related, screen based designs. I won't say GUI, but graphic, like screen based designs, to now into voice design or conversation design or multimodal design for that matter. So I think ISC is an amazing course, and if somebody is looking at joining, they should definitely check it out.
Absolutely. Um, Ujjwal has a question. What specifically did you unlearn at ISC?
Got it. So I think as engineers, or when we are in 10 plus 2, we all learn as soon as we see a problem, just attack that problem and solve that problem, find the solution to that problem, right? At IISc, I think the most important thing that I unlearned was not to jump into the solutions, not to just okay, how can I solve this and what is going to be the solution, but to take a step back and understand what is the real problem. The users may say this is my problem, but often there is an underlying root cause to it, which is the main problem. Otherwise you're just fixing the symptoms, you're not fixing the root cause.
Mm.
So that's what I think that's my most cherished learning, unlearning and learning from ISC, that you should take a step back, understand what is the real problem, and only then attempt to solve it. So there's a very simple I think that one of our professors said in one of the early classes that we had is that if you're working on the wrong problem, your definite solution is definitely going to be wrong. But if you're working on the right problem, there is a chance that your solution might be right. So find the right problem, and at least your half your battle is definitely won.
Oh my God, I love it. Like, I think across all of the folks that I speak to and everyone I look up to, they keep saying the same thing over and over again. Like, if there's one skill that you learn in your career, whatever that career be, learn the skill of problem solving. And you made a very good point, not the wrong problem, the real problem.
Yeah.
And yes, that's great. So tell me, Ami, from there to conversation design, UX design, voice design, um, what was the sort of design approach that you took to get there? Like, how did you even know that that's where you wanted to get to? And did you design your own career in a certain way or not really?
Okay, so I think I always wanted to explore different avenues of design when I had just graduated out, when I had joined Bosch and I was working on like tangible, like product design of tangible products. I was like, okay, I'm going to spend some time learning this, but then I also want to explore different modalities in which people consume products, and this is just one type of product. There are screen-based products, there are voice-based products, there are services. So there are different branches. I wouldn't say branches. There are different avenues of design, different specializations within design also that I thought I wanted to explore. And then I think when I was in SAP, and so I had worked on a project. It was like a hackathon project. It was not something a part of my day-to-day job, but then just two or three colleagues, we got together and sort of built a chatbot experience for a healthcare problem that we were facing. So I was in the healthcare department, and there was a problem, and I sort of worked out that we could build a chatbot around this. So it was me, a designer, and a developer, and an architect, and three of us got together and said, okay, we'll solve this via chatbot. And then I designed the entire flow for it. And I would like to say that I did it well. I converted it to a presentation and I presented it in one of the international design conferences as well. And that's how it sort of got recognized. And that was there in the back of my mind that, hey, this is also an interesting space in design that, I can pursue. And then 1.5 years back, when I came across this position on LinkedIn, and I saw the JD and was like, yeah, 50% of this is just like UX design, and the other 50% of it, which is more into voice space, into conversation space. Um, I think I can manage that. I have done, I've dipped my toes through this project, and I think I should be able to manage. So I went ahead and applied, and then yeah, went through whatever rounds of interview, and fortunately, yeah, I landed up with the job.
Amazing. Well done, you. So, this is perhaps a good time to explain what is conversation design.
Right. So, conversation design is sort of a branch of design where we design the user experience of a virtual assistant. Now, the virtual assistant could be text based, which is like a chatbot, or it could be voice based, which is like Alexa or Google Assistant or Siri, right? So these are, I think, at least in my knowledge, these are the two types of broad categories, that kind of assistants, virtual assistants that you have. And my So I'm currently a voice user experience designer, a VUX designer, and that is a slightly specialized segment within conversation design. It's not very different. A lot of what I do is conversation design, but then a bit is different. So for chatbots, you rely on textual input, like people will type in their query or their questions. But for a voice assistant, you rely on input via sound, right? And when it is sound, and people may be speaking from a distance, or they may not be very clear, there's always a chance that the assistant didn't hear you well, right? And so depending on how well the assistant will hear you, we design for, okay, I heard it well, so okay, I'm going to respond in this way. I'm not so confident that I heard you well. Now this is the assistant speaking, as not speaking, but thinking that I don't think I heard you well, so now this is how I'm going to respond. So we design for these scenarios. And then like for the chatbot, the output is also text, right? But for a voice assistant, the output is speech, it's
Mm.
not text. So again, it's important how the output sounds, not just how it reads. And I guess it, apart from the text, what it is conveying, like through its speed, through the tonality, through the accent. So all these things also matter in matter a bit in voice design. Not a bit. They matter in voice design, but in in chatbot type of designs, that won't matter, because yeah, that modality is not there. So I
Yeah.
think that's a bit about conversation design. Hopefully
Yeah,
I've
that
explained.
yeah, does that answer anyone's question about what is conversation design and what is voice design on top of that? Um, it's really interesting because I had almost not even thought that this sort of a career was out there, though, we talk to Siri, we talk to Alexa all the time. And then one of my students, she actually went and started working at Apple for doing exactly the same sort of stuff for Siri, and she had a degree in literature, and she came at it from a very, what's the accent? They wanted to figure out what the Indian accent sounds like and feels like, and that sort of opened my eyes to, okay, so this is actually quite a creative field, but also very, very technical, and like how the two interplay was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
um um Mina's saying, pretty cool that someone's out there and thinking about the whole thing. Yeah, Mina, like the amounts of thinking that goes behind a simple chatbot as well. Like, we have, in my career, I have probably designed a couple of like chatbot flows, but to take that one level further and go on to the voice piece is like pretty fascinating. Raj asks, which middleware tech platform is used for VUX?
Sorry, I think
I'm not sure I
I'm
understand that
not sure.
question.
No, I do understand the question, but I don't think I'm the right person because I'm not from the technical background that I'll be able to answer that question.
Um, do companies like Apple and Amazon and Google hire people for vernacular languages? I think one day they will. I don't know if they already do or not. You actually
Uh,
might know better.
assistants are available in different languages, and when they are available in different languages means somebody is writing those things that the assistant is talking, right? So yes, they do have teams. Yeah, I would like to think so. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant question. gets us right into the next one, which is, Ami, how, like you told us how you got into it. What do you then do as a conversation designer day to day?
Correct. So it's very similar. Parts of it are very similar to UX design. I work with product managers. I work with the tech team. I work on research with my research colleagues. I distill the requirements with them. I create personas, and that's where it starts to get a bit different. When you're doing like normal UX, you are designing the user's persona, or sorry, not designing, you're creating the user's persona. But when you're doing a chatbot as well, you need to design, when you're doing a virtual assistant, you need to design the virtual assistant's persona also, because that's going to guide you in how you write those dialogues, right? And of course you have to create the user personas, and that's normal. I guess once I'm done with both the personas, right, the virtual assistant persona and the user's persona, what we do is we start writing sort of a script, which is much like dialogue writing for a play, right? That, what does Alexa say? Then what does the user? I mean, sorry, what does the user say? Then what does Alexa respond? Then what does user say? Then what Alexa responds? So it's much like a dialogue, and that's just, I would say, the tip of the iceberg. What we then do is sort of put this entire flow into a flow diagram, and define how the conversation goes ahead. This is just, what I talked about, the dialogue and all. It's just a happy path, as we call the ideal scenario. And this is just like 20% of the work, maybe 10 to 20% of the work. But then the remaining 80 to 90% of the work is the non-ideal parts or the error parts, because when you have a mobile app or a screen, laptop screen, and you have, like, say, 10 buttons on the screen, the user can potentially click on any one of them, and then you need to design for 10 flows after that. But when you are in the voice space or the chatbot space, the user can potentially say anything to the assistant, right? And the assistant should be able to handle it. There are no boundary conditions. It's a conversation. The user can say something that's relevant to the flow that we are in, or they could say something completely irrelevant. But as the virtual assistant, the virtual assistant should be able to handle it, and that's where 80% of my time goes in designing for the error paths, and how to bring the user back to the happy path, or how to in worst cases, like, fail gracefully. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what we do. And just like UX design, so we have this flow diagram, and then we get alignment from all the stakeholders, the tech, the product management, and everybody. And once we are then done with that, that's like our wireframe stage, or the low fidelity mockup stage that we call in UX design. And then we go to the high fidelity mockup stage, which is sort of fine tuning each of those things that the user is going to say, what words to use, how to say it in the least amount of words, to be precise, to be concise, to be meaningful at the same time. And also, it should not come off as rude at any point in time. It should be pleasant and positive. So a lot of things go into, then into the high fidelity design. And then sort of our developer colleagues take all that and code it, and then it's out there for everybody to use.
That is super, super interesting. And it's so funny to realize that ultimately the persona that you get of an Alexa or a Siri or a um, Google Voice Assistant is basically the mashup of personas created in a lab by people like you, Ami. So it's so funny to j- like we use Alexa every day, but we don't ever stop and think, okay, like that's funny, whoever coded up that was funny, but this is the whole process behind it, which is really fascinating. So tell me, this is almost at the interplay of tech and creativity. So what sort of skills do you need to do something like this? Like, do you you yourself, do you code a lot, or do you write the um, the play scripts, as you said? So
Okay. So yes, it's. I think it's a career where you need to dip a little bit into both technology and creativity. You need to understand that how the technology works. You don't need to code. I don't code. We have some amazing developers in our team who do that for us. But you need to understand how the speech recognition works, because I'm into the voice space. The speech recognition element is there, but otherwise, how the NLU will work, like your natural language understanding, how will that work? What all can be processed? What are the tech limitations? Because you need to be mindful of the limitations so that you can design around them. At the same time, there are tech benefits also, like virtual assistants can possibly answer the same question like 100 times also. They're not going to get bored or irritated that why are you asking me the same thing again and again. So it's important to understand the technology, not necessarily write code or build it actually, but it's enough to you should know enough to talk to people who are in the tech domain, right? Only then it would be a meaningful conversation. And on the creative side, I would say there are many people coming from like authors or writers into this space, or speech therapists, speech scientists, or linguists also venturing into this space. So I would say you need to be creative enough to have empathy for the user, and then I guess everything else should fall in place. Yeah.
that is so so
Creative with words. I
interesting.
like to add that you need to be creative with your words, because you can't potentially write paragraphs and paragraphs. Your user is going to be bored listening to all of that. So you need to be creative with them, but need to also keep in mind the simplicity. It's not the place to show your creativity, your vocabulary, your command over the language, but you need to sort of use it at the right places.
Yeah, do what is right for the consumer, not what is right for, not even right for you, like what feels good to you. Sometimes we don't realize that the consumer is in a completely different headspace, and especially when you are designing for, like, I can call Siri at 2 in the morning and say something that is completely different to when I'm having a joke with my friends on a cup of tea. So, and you need to be aware of all of those use cases as well. So that's fascinating. Um, I think we have gathered a ton of questions. Maybe let's go through those, and then I'll come back to ask for your advice, Ami. So let's see. Uh, Prajwal asked, how difficult is it to get into Amazon and SAP? What do they look for in a candidate?
Okay, I'm not a spokesperson for either of them. I can just speak from my personal experience. I think if you're candid about your skills, show openness to learn. I think skills are something that can be acquired, but going in with the right attitude to be open to learning, because I had never designed a screen professionally before I entered SAP, or I had never professionally designed a voice experience before I entered Amazon. But sort of I went with that openness to learn, and I think that's what made the difference. Yeah.
Attitude over everything else. Um, Anvit asks, does Amazon use animation designers? I don't know if Ami is the right person to answer that, but I'm sure a Google search can perhaps answer your question. Search for Amazon animation designer job. Maybe you'll land with something, Anvit. Um, Likit asks, for freshers, how can one build a good profile to get into Amazon? Any advice on that?
I think for any design role in any company, what you need to start out with is a portfolio of your projects, whether they're academic projects or your side projects that you've just done as a part of your exploration. So if you have a good portfolio, I think yeah, people should be willing to speak to you at least, and give you a chance to interview.
Brilliant. And um Manjulika asked, does it involve knowing AI, ML, or just designing? I think you answered that
Yeah.
a bit, but do you want to expand or tell
No, no,
once
I
more?
think that's the extent of it. You need to understand how the ML works or what are its limitations, because technology is not like the perfect right now, and there's only limited amount of things that you can do in a limited amount of time. And you need to consider that also, that if you want to launch a product in 3 months or 6 months or whatever, you need to consider how much will my team be able to build in this much time, and then you need to have those aspects as well. So yes, understanding technology is important, but I think knowledge wise it is important. I won't say skill wise it is required.
Right. So you don't need to be a machine learning expert, Manjulika, if that's what you're asking. What Ami is saying is that you want to have a understanding of what the process flow, etc., takes and what is possible in the time frame realistically, rather than you know be able to code it up. And like, this is not a one person job, this entire experience. It's like thousands of people sitting together doing something like this. um cool. um I think Raj's question, we sort of said that we are not perhaps the right people to answer this. um Vignesh asks, the field sounds super interesting, but how do we know if this is for us? How did you know that this is what you wanted to do? I,
Okay, like I said, I did an exploratory project in this space, so that was one trigger. Another one was the fact that I always wanted to explore different areas, different avenues of design, and this was a good opportunity to do that. So I guess, yeah, I think things just fell into place. It was not something I had deliberately planned at that point in time. I want to do that, but it's sort of, I went with the flow, I guess. Yeah.
okay, got it. Um, Ujjwal asks, can this be used for sales pitch conversational flows? That's a really interesting one. I don't know what you have to say about that one. I mean, I have a couple of thoughts.
No, I would say, yeah, Sudeshna, go ahead.
Um, I would say a couple of things, Ujjwal, on that. One is it'll again very much depend on the use case and who your prospect is and what sort of data you train your AI on. Um, in theory, you could say that, actually speaking, of all of the sales conversations that have been out there, if you could train a bot up on all of that, you will get this super bot who will end up selling you irrespective of whatever you say. So in theory, that is what it is. But in practice, I think it'll end up being really about the use case. And I'm not entirely sure if someone would want to put a bot like that out in the open. So I don't know, maybe something like GPT-3 you could use to do something like that. I don't know. But I don't think, other than asking us to sign up to Amazon Music very frequently, Alexa tries to do that much, nor does Siri. I don't think even Google Voice Assistant. So that is a very convoluted answer to what you asked, but that's the best I could come up with. Right. So Chaitanya says he's a UX designer in his company while building products, makes a lot of assumptions while building personas. I think that's fair to say that we all do that. Wanted to understand how comprehensive a job you guys are able to specifically in building personas, also because Amazon has a lot of data insights to be able to do personas really well.
Oh, well, I can say that any persona, irrespective of Amazon or whatever, right? SAP or Bosch or whatever it is, any persona, a good persona should be based on your research findings of, your users, the end users that you've researched within your research phase and sort of done interviews or surveys or whatever that may be. So I think any good persona should be based on that, and that should not be built on data or insights or anything. Because I don't think it's a qualitative. It's a qualitative artifact. It's not a quantitative artifact. Personas are very qualitative in nature, and they are sort of guiding lights for you when you are designing the flows and everything else.
Yeah, I would agree. I think especially when you are more and more technical and like work with tons of data and insights, you start creating this space where you are like, I can create micro personas and I can create a persona for every individual. But what ends up happening is that's not a very strategic way to go about things, because you are then operating in the market of one. And guess what? That is not a great market to be
That's
in.
not a persona. That's personalization, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah, different softwares offer personalization, and
yeah, yeah,
everybody knows you can't design specifically for each and every user. It has to be a
exactly,
common persona, and that's where
exactly,
personalization and
exactly.
customizations come into place.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. For So Likit asks, for a role like this, do you need to understand the limitations of what technology can or can't do back and forth from the designers? I think you pretty much answered that
I
before.
think, yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay. Raj asks, what are the stepwise processes to create a Vue.x flow? I don't want to encroach too much onto what you are exactly
I
doing,
just
but
answered that. I already answered that. I start with a, like a dialogues for a script and then sort of convert it into a flow chart. And that's how you design for any, conversation experience.
cool. Um, Prajwal asks, you work in India, US, or Europe? Actually,
India.
you work in
I
India.
work in India. I work for India first experiences that are made for India, that are made in India.
Okay. Does it come under the Make in India program as
No,
well?
no,
Sorry,
no, no.
that's a really silly joke that I people should stop
No,
me
it's
from
just
talking.
I'm speaking out of my pride for our country. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. No, I think that's really cool because especially with something like the more personal you get, like voice is quite a human skill, to be honest. And I think the more you get into that domain, the better it is when you create it within the country, because the cultural nuances and all of that you need to understand. Just like in a different country, they wouldn't understand all of those things.
And that's for all
um,
designs, right? Not just voice design. If you're designing an app for India, it would be a bit different than what you would design for in the US. So I think it applies to all. Maybe for voice, it's a bit
yeah,
more because language
yeah,
is very strong, plays a very strong role in this
yeah,
conversation space. But yeah, apart from that, yeah.
yeah. I would say that, yeah, definitely, like voice more than if you were designing a washing machine, for example, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, so Yamina says, let's say I want to get into this space. What's a good place to get started? Also, what would you say are the skills and traits that are most crucial for this field?
I think that's an excellent question. I can try to give some advice that I have on the top of my mind from my experience. I think start with reading a lot of maybe articles about this space. You have a ton on the internet available. Read good books. I can recommend one which I started with, which was designing voice user interfaces by Kathy Pearl. And you can read that book. That's really good. But it's about voice user interfaces, not so much about the chatbots. But yeah, it's a good place to get started at least. Once you're done with that, I mean, when you're done with these things, you would get an understanding or an overview of the technology that also goes on in the background. So I think you would be covered on that front when you do this. After this, I would say create a project or two based on conversation design for your portfolio, so that when you're applying for this kind of a job, you can showcase that you have dipped your toes in this space. It may be good, it may be not so good. Talk to design mentors out there. I think there's a great ADP list community where you can look for mentors and talk to them and get your portfolios reviewed, get their advice. So do that, talk to others, talk to senior people in the space. And I think that should be good to get you started, because this space has UX designers, like I said, linguists, writers, speech scientists, therapists, and it's very welcoming because it's a very new space. There are very few people in this space, so I would just say that once you're done with all of this, just have the confidence to apply to that job that you're eyeing on, and if nothing, you'll at least get an experience as to what is expected. Um, yeah.
Brilliant. So, Ami, do you need a degree in design like you did to get into something like this?
I wouldn't say that's mandatory, because I've seen many people who don't have degrees in design also into this space. Like I said, many writers or linguists are in this space. So many people who are good in literature come into this space. So that is also another aspect to it. It's not a degree in design that they have. So yeah, I don't think that's a mandatory thing to have. I
Got
think
it.
what's more important is your ability. One more thing that you need is to have a good command over the language in which you are designing. Yeah, I don't mean fancy vocabulary or yeah, shiny stuff. But I mean trying communicating in the least possible amount of words, in such that an exact meaning is conveyed. Yeah, I think that's pretty much that you need uh,
Yeah.
do well in this space.
Yeah. So basically, you are saying concise, simple,
Yes.
and yeah, that is definitely the command over the language rather than trying to be literary, I think.
Yeah,
You don't need to be literary, you just need to be good
you need to
at
be good. You need
good at
strong grammar.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Good at conversation. Okay, great. And can you talk to us a bit more about from the perspective of understanding a user, the consumer, or whoever is going to be using the product? Like, what sort of like I could imagine even people with a degree in psychology or some understanding of psychology could come in and make a mark in this field as well. So, how do you typically work through? I mean, you said personas, obviously that's a big part of it, but also the in the moment humor that an Alexa or a Siri would have, or something like getting annoyed, but you have to calm them down. So do you look at psychology principles and all of those things as well as a part of
Yeah,
this?
yes, yes, there are some psychology based principles. Design itself is a lot inspired by psychology. If you read The Design of Everyday Things by Norman, he comes from a psychology plus engineering space, and he talks about the psychology of designing. So yes, it has a very big role to play, because it's the user's psychology that we need to understand and then address. So yes, somebody from the psychology field also could make a great mark in this area, provided that they can also understand the technology a bit, and like I said, have a decent fair enough command over the language as well.
Got it. um any other questions, folks, while we have Ami here? And while we are waiting for it, Ami, would you be happy for anyone to get in touch with you if they wanted to ask any further follow-up questions?
Sure. So, like I said, I am on ADP list. You can, if you want, you can book a session with me. It's, yeah, it's a free community. So, uh, I can spend some time. I try to do that over the weekends or sometime like that.
Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, just speak to budding designers. I like to speak to young designers, budding designers who are starting out, and sort of share my journey. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. That's been really, really useful. And it's definitely one of those careers that I feel quite excited by because I think while we were growing up, and I don't know about you, Ami, it might be very different in your case, but for most of us, we were brought up with, okay, so there are two, maybe if you get very creative, four paths that you can take. You can do medicine, you can do engineering, and then if you are going to the other end, you're like, okay, law and maybe finance. That's sort of the spectrum that we tended to draw around ourselves. And we definitely were one who were like, okay, but what will linguists do? What is the use of studying language? And suddenly we have these fields that are literally dependent on people having the great command over language and being creative, also a bit of humor, also like it's literally like social skills, but you are teaching social skills to a voice assistant or something. And I find that really, really fascinating, and I'm really, really excited about it because it's very, very different from the traditional engineering fields per se, I think.
It
uh,
is, yes. You're absolutely right. I think when I grew up, I also knew about these four or five options. But yeah, I think fate has some things in store for you. I never knew I would be designing when I was a child. Yeah, it's doctor, engineer, pilot, army, standard templated responses. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a pretty unique space. It's a pretty great space to be in. Yeah,
brilliant.
living my
Okay.
dreams.
Yeah, I know you are living the dream. I
The
really
dream
like
that
when
I
I
never had.
the dream that you never had. That's like, sometimes you ask for something and life says, no, I won't give you that. I'll give you something better.
Something better. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, like I go on my woo um tangent and say that, there's a lot that comes when you trust the universe and
Yeah.
everything happens for you. Brilliant. On that note, I feel like if no one has any other questions, we'll call it a day here. Thank you so much, Ami, for hanging out with us. And
Oh,
if
pleasure.
you want to get in touch with Ami, go to the ADP community and book in something
Or on
with her
LinkedIn. Of
or
course,
on
I'm
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. So yeah.
Great. And we'll catch you folks the next week. Bye.
Cool. Bye. Thanks a lot, Sudeshna. And thank you, everybody else in the chat window. It was great interacting. And thank you for all the great questions that you had.
Brilliant. Bye.
Bye.